Well, to talk more, I'm joined by Ksenia Svetlova, Senior Researcher Fellow at the MITVIM Institute, and over in Bahrain, journalist and commentator Abdulla Aljenaid. Good evening to you both, and thank you very much for being with us. So, Abdullah, I'll start with you. The Gulf countries say they prefer a political solution to the war in Ukraine. Do they not, though, see the need to put some pressure on Moscow?
Good evening to you, Laura, and to the viewers. Thank you for having me again. I believe that the GCC want to opt out of this cockfight between the US and Russia, although it is on European, ground, and that's very unfortunate what's happening to Ukraine. But this is for the US and Russia to work out, and not to, for the GCC be cornered by Russia or the US to be within the polarization effort by both capitals. This is a mess that the US created, and unfortunately, Putin have walked into it, so they both better sit and work it out.
Ksenia, what's your take on the issue? Are the Gulf countries basically saying here, look, the US is no more of an ally to us than Russia, so why should we take sides?
Well, where should I start? So I think that you have to differentiate, first of all, between the rhetorics and between real actions, real deeds, between real politics. And we have yet, to see, it will be in a few weeks or so, the decision that will be eventually made by Saudi Arabia in regards to increasing its oil output. This is something that, in this regard, there is a big difference between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia eventually wants to increase the outputs and will be willing, perhaps, also to fill the void that is right now left by Russia, because it's shunned and boycotted by many global customers. And in regards to the big question of whether, Middle East has to be involved, whether this is something that is mainly European and not so much, Middle Eastern affair, so then, I have to tell you that anybody in the West can always say, well, what is happening with Iran and its hegemony, and Israel or Gulf countries, it's a Middle Eastern affair. Why should we be involved? But we want them to be involved, aren't we? So there are no more local affairs anymore in the world. Everything that is happening right now in Europe, it shakes the world, it affects the world. So do we want it or not? We are already involved. We have to make a stance. We have to make some decisions. Our countries have to, and Israel is dealing with this, and I know the Gulf countries are dealing with this. Eventually, we will have to choose. And I think that Saudi Arabia particularly will need to choose rather quickly, who is its main ally.
Yes, and of course, Abdullah, we are expecting the US President Joe Biden in the region later this month. We don't know if he's going to Saudi Arabia quite yet. But Ksenia has a point, doesn't she? There are no local issues now. Everything is interconnected. And we might say that the UAE very much wanted Washington's support when it came to Houthi attacks.
Yeah, and I think that both UAE and Saudi Arabia and everybody else in the region who is saying that Iran is dangerous, Iran's proxies should be addressed.
Thank you,
Ksenia. Let me bring in Abdullah. I'm sorry. Let me bring in Abdullah on that point.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that
no problem at all. Abdullah.
Put it this way. It's not the less of a threat or what we are expecting from our strategic allies. What we are talking about is representing our national interest and what's the best for the whole region. At the present time, what we should bank on is a collective regional political will to address all issues, from the Iranian nuclear program, Iranian threat, maritime security, food shortages. All these challenges are not going to be sorted overnight by the US or anybody else. It's up to us. What we expect is one thing, but we don't want lip service in terms of, taking side at the cost of our own national interest. But put it this way, well, what we have seen from the United States back in 2003 was met by similar reckless, total disregard to the security or the stability of the region during the 2015 interference by the Russian in Syria. What we need is for those allies, they're going to call themselves, strategic allies. It's not that we are shy in taking position. No, we know what is happening in Ukraine is immoral and it could not be accepted or defended by Russia or anybody else. But at the end of the day, it is a mess that the two countries have worked on. And I'm talking about the US and then Russia. And it is also enforced or, let's say, encouraged by the lack of action on the part of Europe, representing its own best interest and its own best, security policies.
Ksenia, I wonder if I could get your response to what you just heard from Abdullah. And I also wanted to ask you about Israel's position in all of this, because has Israel played it right? Because it has annoyed Russia, it has annoyed Vladimir Putin, who of course controls the Syrian airspace, at the same time has been told hasn't really done enough to support Ukraine. So how would you say that squares up compared to the strategy of the Gulf states?
Well, for your first question, I will just return to what I was saying in the beginning, with, all of the respect, to this visit and the honor that definitely, Lavrov, for him, it was something that he is earning, to get it, right now from somebody in the important country, like Saudi Arabia. This is great. But does Saudi Arabia, a significant regional power, really wants to associate itself with a country that, first of all, has obligations toward another Middle Eastern actor, which is Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran? No, I think that this, question is quite clear. This answer is quite clear. And what we've seen during the last few weeks, coming from Wall Street Journal, Reuters, indications of, very close ties by Russian officials, Russian commercial firms, Chinese commercial firms, and Quds Force of Iran that is recognized in many countries here in the Middle East as a terrorist organization. Okay, so this is first. I do not think, by the way, that it's such a blow, this visit to Saudi Arabia. We have seen many Arab ministers visiting Moscow on and off, during the last 3 months. So again, there's not something new. As for Israel, well, I think that it should be crystal clear. United States, it's not without a flaw, okay? And Israel, just like anybody else, just like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Emirates, fears that eventually, the United States is disengaging from the region, and that our problems here, specifically Iran, are not on the table anymore. They are not important enough. And nevertheless, I sincerely believe, that there is no other ally for our country, for Israel. And even if Israel, managed to cross somehow Vladimir Putin, then I think that, it's maybe it was undesired, event, but this is something that Israel can live with. And the freedom of Israeli movement in the Syrian skies was not limited. I do not think that it's Russian interest right now to open another front up north, on the Israeli northern border. But let's wait and see. I personally am sure that Israel can do much more for Ukraine. Also exercise some sanctions against Putin's oligarchs who are funding, the war machine, and send more humanitarian aid. This is definitely something that we can do. It doesn't need a lot of effort. We just have to decide and do it.
Ksenia, thank you very much. Abdullah, your thoughts on that? And I just wanted to ask you, do you think we're seeing a broader trend here in the region of states saying, they can still have strong the United States, but they also need to look after their own interests, and that might mean talking to other countries?
Just as a follow-up quickly, if you read the official communique issued by the GCC Foreign Minister today, it says it respects all countries' sovereignty and condemns any form of attrition on any country's sovereignty in any way. I think Lavrov have pushed the GCC to issue a position or express a position that is not going to be self-servant of what was expected. The GCC decided to stay uninvolved for one reason: hoping that one day, but would they exert certain sort of efforts within the diplomatic channels to aid our allies in Europe, the States, and even talk to the Russian? Definitely, we would like to encourage all parties to cease fire and go to the negotiating table as soon as possible. What is happening in Ukraine is not acceptable nor ethical. Now, with regard to U.S., let's say, minimizing its presence in the Middle East, I don't think that this is the fact, and I believe it is totally wrong.